Learning German can be a very rewarding experience that can fill you with pride, a sense of accomplishment, and bring you lots of joy. Or it can crush you, destroy your soul, and leave you hopeless. And that's without ever even getting to the grammar. Maybe a little dramatic, but pretty much that.
Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie.
And I'm Aubrey.
And we are two Americans currently living in Germany and sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. I have had a life goal of becoming bilingual, and I just knew that moving to a foreign country and diving headfirst into a new language would force me to achieve that goal. We also were given different requirements from the German government if we wanted to stay here long term as to how much German we would be required to know in order to be given that privilege. As monolingual people, we had some ideas of what to expect when learning a new language, but what has our experience learning German actually been like? And would we recommend others to do the same? Well, that is exactly what we are going to talk about today in our video, Expectations versus Reality, Learning German in all of its brutality.
Normally, this part of the video is where I give the disclaimer that our experiences are specific to where we are from and where we live now. But this week, that isn't the case. Yes, our journey of learning a new language is specific to us, and everybody learning a new language will have variations of the same experience. But when it comes to learning German, well, I think Mark Twain summed it up nicely when he wrote his paper, The Awful German Language. In it, he writes, "Surely there is not another language that is so slipshod and systemless, and so slippery and elusive to the grasp. A person who has not studied German can form no idea of what a perplexing language it is. The inventor of the language seems to have taken pleasure in complicating it in every way he could think of. Even Germans themselves have a saying, Deutsche Sprache, schwere Sprache, meaning German language, hard language." So if you're learning German or any other language, let us know your thoughts in the comments below if your experience is similar to Mark Twain's or our experience.
We both technically studied Spanish in elementary school and middle school, but then in high school, I switched to Latin, whereas Aubrey stuck to Spanish. Aubrey also then went on to minor in American Sign Language in college, but neither of us are even close to bilingual. According to theatlantic.com, less than 1% of American adults today are proficient in a foreign language that they studied in a US classroom. That's noteworthy considering that in 2008, almost all high schools in the country, 93% offered foreign languages. So we aren't unique in this fact, and The Atlantic tries to describe part of the reasons for this could be the fact that in America, we learn foreign languages in non-immersive ways. There is already a teacher shortage, and trying to find teachers is hard enough, much less those that can speak more than one language, or even political reasons that hinder funding for these programs.
All of this to say, we didn't know what it takes to be fully bilingual or even what that experience must be like to have more than one language floating around in your head. When we arrived in Germany, we were given specific language proficiency requirements if we wanted to stay here long term and get permanent residency permits. Based on our visa type, I would have to achieve only an A1 level of German, and Donnie would be required to achieve at least B1 German. These levels of language learning aren't really used in the US, and therefore we had no idea what they meant. They denote levels on the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, Learning, Teaching, Assessment, or CEFR. This is a system to help and describe language achievement for foreign languages in Europe that is becoming more commonly used in other parts of the world. But for us and our lacking language skills, this gave us direction and rough timelines for what we thought it would take to learn German.
With having no knowledge of this scale, I just assumed that if the government was requiring me to achieve a B1 level to gain long-term residency here, that probably meant I would be pretty fluent at that point. Immediately after moving here, I signed up for an integration course at our local Volkshochschule in order to get me up to this level in just 6 months by taking classes completely in German, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. In essence, I thought that in 6 months, I would be a fluent German speaker and would have achieved my goal of finally becoming a bilingual human. Well, I hadn't read Mark Twain's warning where in the same paper he also wrote, "My philological studies have satisfied me that a gifted person ought to learn English, barring spelling and pronouncing, in 30 hours, French in 30 days, and German in 30 years. It seems manifest then that the latter tongue ought to be trimmed down and repaired. If it is to remain as it is, it ought to be gently and reverently set aside among the dead languages, for only the dead have time to learn it."
Another big assumption we had moving to Germany is that we expected to move here and learn some in the classroom or online, but a lot more through immersion. We have mixed feelings on whether or not this really has been the case. On one hand, we always have German radio on in our car. When we go to the train station, we hear announcements in German. We can flip the TV on and watch German television, and those types of things give us much more exposure to German than what we would be getting if we lived in the US. However, in terms of actually speaking it, we have found it quite difficult to feel immersed in the language in our daily lives.
In our minds, immersion would mean we would come across many situations where we interact with people that don't speak any English, and we would really be forced to speak German and learn it quickly that way. However, more often than not, we find Germans speak English with impeccable abilities and seem to prefer to speak in English with us rather than struggling through us speaking German to them. You can see from this map that 56% of Germans self-reported they can hold a conversation in English, and honestly, that seems a lot lower than we expected, especially when compared to neighbors like Austria, Denmark, and the Netherlands. There are definitely parts of Germany that have fewer English speakers than others, particularly outside of the cities or in East Germany, for example, but we also know a lot of Germans who can hear we are English speakers and like the chance to practice their English with us, or like we mentioned, they already speak very good English and aren't used to many foreigners coming here and speaking German, so it is actually easier to just switch to English. We don't fault anybody for that, and we appreciate when people do help us in English if we don't know the German. But we have learned the importance of immersive learning and seeking out opportunities for it ourselves.
For any of you having the same problem, no matter what language you are working on, a great solution for this problem is actually the sponsor of today's video, Busuu. Busuu is a language learning platform that teaches the world's most popular languages and has a lot of really great features like one-on-one tutoring with native speakers, or the Busuu community, where you can interact with native speakers of your target language to feel immersed in the language and get feedback with how you're doing.
If you are like me and need a way to actually learn the language in a natural way and not just learn boring textbook vocab and grammar, but want to speak like a native, then you should check out Busuu. In the description, you will find 2 links where you can download their app on your phone or use their desktop site. You can start learning for free and then also choose a premium account for a lot of additional features.
So what did we imagine the process of learning German would be like? From our limited experience with trying to learn other languages, we just assumed there would be lots of memorizing translations for words, maybe some verb conjugating, and some minor grammatical differences. I thought learning the new throat noises would be the most difficult part. We never put any thought into the fact that a language may have completely different grammar, rules, or structures. And I don't just mean putting a comma in different places or capitalization differences. I mean the structure of formulating your thoughts and ideas into sentences is completely different.
The structure of the German language is extremely different from English. A good example of what we mean is the way that verbs are used in German versus in English. I'm not going to dive into a German grammar lesson here, but where in English, if you have 2 or more verbs in a sentence, you will have them towards the beginning of the sentence. However, in German, you will have one at the beginning and just throw all the rest of the verbs at the very end of a sentence. So the sentence, "I would like to go walking today," in English, directly translated from the German translation, would be something like, "I would today like walking go." There are also verbs that you split in half and have half of the word at the beginning of the sentence and the other few letters just thrown at the end of the sentence. Different cases, formal and informal speech, so many commas, and it just goes nuts. All that to say, it didn't take long for us to realize that learning German is not just simply translating words, but learning completely from scratch how a language works.
We also had the rational expectation that German is German, and once we learn it, we'll be able to communicate with anybody in Germany. Well, that expectation was sort of accurate because on one hand, we can mostly communicate with everybody in the country with the German we learn, but there are also a lot of cases in which the German we learn will not be what people use to communicate on a daily basis. So what do I mean? Just to speak specifically of Germany in this video and not include the other German-speaking regions of the world, to simplify a bit, when someone from one part of Germany speaks to someone from another part of the country, let's say somebody from the north and another from the south, there is a good likelihood that they will not be able to understand each other unless they speak to each other in a very specific version of German known as Standard German.
Basically, Germany can be divided into many different regions of different dialects, and sometimes from village to village and city to city, the German spoken in those places are completely different. Sometimes what is spoken is even considered a completely different language rather than just a dialect of German. To be clear, this isn't just simple accent differences, although that is a big part as well, but totally different words, pronunciation, rules, etc. To give an example, in one part of the country, potatoes are called Kartoffeln, in another, Grünbirnen, in another, Erdäpfel, and so on. Because the language is so diverse, one standard German is taught in schools, used in the media, and spoken between different parts of the country where people don't speak the same dialect just so the country can actually communicate with one another. Now, we are working on a very interesting project more in depth on this subject in which you could be in one of our videos. Just check out the community tab on our channel to see what I'm talking about. But for the sake of this video, we are just explaining the fact that we didn't realize we would be learning the standardized version of German and that there are an unbelievable amount of different dialects spoken across Germany that may be completely different and not understandable even when you have learned German.
So, okay. With all this talk about us learning German and our journey through this difficult and surprising language, where actually do we stand? Well, maybe we should just show you. Oh gosh, here we go. Ich heiße Aubrey. Ich komme aus den USA, aber ich wohne in Deutschland. Ich spreche A1 Deutsch. Ich lerne sehr langsam Deutsch. Ich arbeite Vollzeit auf Englisch als ein amerikanisch Sprechpathologin, ähnlich einem Deutsch-Logopädin.
Und jetzt habe ich meinen B1-Prüfung bestanden und meine B1-Zertifikat bekommen. Letztes Jahr habe ich 5 Videos ganz auf Deutsch gedreht. Ehrlich gesagt, ich bin noch nicht mit meinem Deutsch zufrieden, weil meine Akzent und Aussprache sehr schlecht sind und wegen des Lockdowns habe ich meine Deutsch nicht genug geübt. Ich verstehe fast alles, das ich höre und lese, aber zu sprechen auf Deutsch ist nicht ganz einfach. Ich möchte weiterlernen, weil jetzt ich verstehe, dass B1 nicht fließend ist, aber ich muss auf die Schule warten, bis die wieder mehr Kurse anbieten.
So is learning German what we expected? Well, as you can see, basically everything we expected was wrong. The only thing that we did expect and the reality matched is the fact that when we speak it and we are able to have a conversation or at least somewhat communicate with someone in their native language, we feel on top of the world and a major sense of accomplishment.
We would highly recommend anybody looking to learn German or any language for that matter to do it. And if you are already in the learning phase, keep going and don't get discouraged. Let us know in the comments what your experience was learning a foreign language and if you can relate to any of the feelings that we had. To see who made it this far into the video, write in the comments if you could learn any language, what would it be? If you like this video, please hit that like and subscribe button and we will see you in our next video.
Tschüss!
Hey guys! Oh. Yeah, why are you breathing out of your nose for so long? Why are you sitting there going?
I have to breathe, Johnny.
Yeah, but keep it quiet. Jeez. Aubrey also then went on to minor in... Aubrey also... No, it wasn't you, it was just my silly brain.
Oh, silly brain.
But where in English, if you have 2 or more...
Just keep going.
Okay. Sometimes I get...
Why don't just stop?